Right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Here with David Stone today. Thanks for being on, David.
I'm thrilled to be here, Matthew, and thanks for inviting me to join you. And I'm just thrilled to share this message with all the listeners that you have and the followers that you've got.
Such a pleasure. And obviously, we've spoken before, so I know that obviously you're a big advocate in the area of male mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Been a very strong advocate of my campaign, and obviously David is running 𝗊𝗍𝗄𝗏 and is trying to foster masculinity 2.0. So David, tell us how you got interested in this and what you're trying to
achieve. Step one, I was born a guy. and brought up, and I was brought up in a very traditional kind of way. I grew up in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and as guys, we're and there's still a whole lot of it going on today. I mean, today the level of enlightenment is much higher than it ever used to be. But we've still got the kind of social conditioning going on that tells men, boys, here's what the prototype. Here's what you should be. This is what you're aiming for. I mean, we just a week or two ago the passing of the iconic Sean Connery, and this is a guy I really admired. I'm a James Bond fan and all the rest of it. But when you watch these are messages that are put into us overtly and subliminally. And we're told this is what a guy is supposed to be like. And it's fun to watch them. But when I watch those movies, I always remind myself, this is a cartoon. This is not real. And so, but you have to remind yourself, and yet those messages are there over and over and over again that tell us this is what a guy is supposed to be. And if you're falling short of that, then there's something wrong with you. And what are those things that guys are supposed to be? Well, you're never supposed to be vulnerable. You're never supposed to ask for, you're never supposed to display weakness. You're never supposed to need help. You're supposed to be able to be the provider for everybody. And all these things that are put on us are absolutely impossible to live up with. Now, for women, they face exactly the same thing. You're supposed to be beautiful all the time. You're supposed to look like this. You're supposed to behave in this way. It's completely and utterly impossible for anybody to live up to that cartoon stereotype that we've all had put in front of us. And yet there's this pressure that comes on us. And for guys, one of these, there's all these things that you're supposed to live up to, but the one extra one that's kind of thrown in there just for fun is you're never supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to have or experience emotions. You're not supposed to have or experience weakness of any sort. And you're sure as hell not supposed to talk to anybody about it. And so when we are faced with this impossible situation, this impossible bar that we're supposed to clear, and we're finding we can't. So now that introduces, I've got internal stress and all the rest of it. It shows up as worry and anxiety and fear because I'm not being who I'm supposed to be, but don't talk to anybody about it. And so it's like a kettle. It's on the heat. The kettle's on the heat. It's filled with water. The steam is building up, but there's nowhere for it to go. And so eventually it's going to show up. And and for men, it shows up in some really, really disturbing and destructive ways. I mean, you're familiar with the stats. For the last 70 years. Men have consistently had 3.5 times the suicide rate than women. So guys, this is how it's working out for us. This is how we're handling it, right? Not exactly what you'd call healthy. Men have 2 to 3 times higher alcohol abuse rates, twice the substance and drug abuse rates. Men are responsible for 97% of the domestic violence incidents, okay? Or for being the instigator in domestic violent incidents. And the kicker that really got me, the stat that just blew me away, is, there are a number of different statistics, but the one that I came across, between 1966 and 2012, okay, that's this period, there were 292 mass shooting incidents around the world. And we hear about these. And of course, I live in the US, and this is if you want to learn how to be a mass shooter, this is a place to come and learn how to do it, because you can get the guns, and I don't get it. But anyway, I don't want to get off topic. But of 292 mass shooting incidents around the world, exactly one was carried out by a woman. So if you can't get the underlying message here, then you got a serious problem. But the point is, men have all this bottled up anxiety, all this fear. Then on top of it, part of the stereotype is that it's okay for a man to display aggression. All right, that's a manly thing, to be angry, to be physical. And so that's how it comes out. It comes out as violence. It comes out as destructive behavior, whether the violence is on yourself, or whether it's on ones who are close to you, or whether it's on complete strangers. And so, guys, we have to look at these stats and look at the situation and say, this is not working. Whatever it is we're doing is not producing the results we want. And so it's really, really important to start saying, okay, all right, maybe there's a better way. And this is what I like to refer to as masculinity 2.0. Because one of the things, and I like to sort of trick ourselves, because one of the elements of masculinity, one of the stereotypes of masculinity, is we don't like to be duped. We don't like to be scammed. We don't like to have a fast one pulled on us. And yet, if these are the results we're getting, we're being duped by, saying, this is how you ought to behave, but these are the results. Somebody's pulling a fast one on us here. And I want to use traditional masculinity to redefine masculinity. And that's why I like to call it, masculinity 2.0, that includes a whole bunch of new ways of thinking about that.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a few things that really struck me. I really like this analogy of that kind of pressure cooker, that kind of kettle that needs that release, and we're not doing that along the way. And then when it blows up, then we have these catastrophic kind of events. I really like the compassionate way that you've kind of read those instances of violence that men might perpetuate. Like, it's easy to look at them, and no doubt that's there's people out there that are bad people and all the rest of it, but there's people also under a lot of internal pressure that then comes out in these kind of really horrendous ways. And I really like kind of switch it on its head and going, well, is it masculine to be duped by this faulty idea? And is it logical, like when you look at these stats, to think that this is a healthy way to view masculinity? So I'm totally on board for masculinity 2.0, that's for sure.
Well, good. And of course, it's not, the vast majority of men do not go off and shoot 12 people, or beat their wives or anything like that, fortunately. But a lot of guys really struggle with this, and perhaps it hasn't reached the level of having to break out into violent or aggressive behavior or something, but because they're still managing to keep it in. But the effort that's required to keep it in, and the discomfort of keeping it in. There's a condition known as high functioning anxiety, And in that situation, what it is from the outside, you appear to have it all together. You know, you go to work, you get your job done, you go to school, you're performing well. In fact, a lot of high functioning anxiety people are overperforming. There's one person that I coach, and you know, without giving away anything, but he's a guy that overperforms and has to, and pushes himself so hard, and it's like trying to make up for something, because we feel inside, I'm not measuring up, I'm not reaching this goal that's been set for me. And it's not a goal they set for themselves. It's a goal that somebody or society outside of us has established and said, unless you meet this bar, you are not worthy in some way. So people push themselves so hard, and then we get this high functioning anxiety that on the outside they look, wow, have you ever got your stuff together? You know, and you're really on top of things, but inside they're terrified. They've got this impending doom feeling, and the level of severity of that, and the emotions that we feel are just awful. And nobody should have to put up with that, because we go through life. And you know, this is how I got started with it. I spent my life, and fortunately, my levels of worry and anxiety were not to the point of being destructive. They weren't to the point of, you know, breaking out in anger or in violence or anything like that. And I'm very fortunate for that. But they did get in the way of me living my life. And I spent so many years saying, okay, as soon as I do this, then everything's going to be all right and my life can begin. As soon as I get that house, as soon as I make this much money, as soon as whatever it was, there was always something ahead of me that's as soon as I get that, then everything will be all right. And that went on for decades. And then suddenly I woke up and I thought, well, just a minute, you know, let's call time here and think about this for a second. For 55 years, I've been waiting for things to begin. Just as soon as this is done, then it'll be all right. And it suddenly hit me, and I thought, whoa, this is never going to happen. It's just constant. It's like, you know, the donkey with the guy with the stick and the carrot out in front of it, you know, it's just constantly way out there ahead of you. And, you know, we hear these days about mindfulness and living in the present and living in the now. And I spent my entire, 5 decades of my life living somewhere out there in the future. And as a result, you spend your life waiting for life to begin. And I thought, no, that really sucks. Now, for some guys, it just gets so bad that they can't stand it, and then they drink themselves to death, or they drink themselves till somebody else dies, or whatever it is. We don't need that. And even if it doesn't come out that way, there's sickness that comes on, because we get hypertension, we get dizziness, we get restlessness and agitation, we get insomnia, we get panic attacks. I mean, you're familiar with these kinds of things that happen because of this stuff that's going on inside. We're told that we have to do this, and we're constantly worrying about the things that could go wrong. We've got these feelings of dread. We're catastrophizing all the time. What a lousy way to live. And especially if it then ultimately ends by saying, I can't stand this any longer. It's to me right now, it would feel better to die than it would be to try and keep going on this. That is just so tragic and so utterly unnecessary. It really is. But let's talk about what the things, what do men worry about? Well, there's a list is really long. We as guys, one of the things that we sort of amuse ourselves with is watching women worry about their appearance, right? Is my hair right? Is my makeup right? All the rest of it. Guys, we are just as bad. We worry about our height, all right? Am I too tall? You can't go out with a girl who's taller than you. You can't marry somebody taller than you. Why? So I'll buy some shoes that have, a little thicker heels or something. We worry about our hair. Look at my, it's all falling out, but I got to buy stuff to make the hair not fall out? Should I color it? It's starting to turn gray. Should I put some color in it? And let's talk about sexual performance. We worry about our penises. You know, are they big enough? Can I perform? How do I look naked? You know, then we worry about aging. Am I getting too old? You know, and me, I've gotten over getting old by now, and I've gotten over the hair falling out and all the rest of it. But we worry about these things are every bit as much as our female counterparts do. Then we worry about money, right? Because we're supposed to be the providers. We're supposed to be the breadwinners. Now, again, we live in 2020. There's been a whole lot of enlightenment. Thank God that there's been a whole lot more enlightenment about that, but it still sneaks in. And it shows up as, you know, there is still around the world disparity in equal pay for equal work between men and women, which tells us that society is still saying, you guys are the breadwinners. So is our earning power up there? Am I earning enough? You know, I know one guy who lost his job and his whole identity is wrapped up in this is who I am. I make this salary. I have this title. I have all these people reporting to me. That becomes part of our self-image. Then we worry about what I like to call relevance. Where am I in my career? You know, am I, I'm 35 now. Have I made the kind of progress in my career that I'm supposed to make? Am I being a good husband? Am I being a good father? Am I being a good boyfriend? Am I being, you know, then we go into the whole who am I thing. And then, you know, then let's have a midlife crisis. And frankly, you know, it's become a joke, the whole midlife crisis thing, which is really unfortunate because what happens by the time, you know, you hit 35, you hit 40, you hit 45, and you're starting to think, just a minute, I'm still waiting for my life to begin here. I haven't really, yes, I've got a job, I've got the trappings, I've got a car, I got a house, whatever I've got. Why don't I feel satisfied? What's wrong now? There's something wrong with me. I know. And then, of course, we all make jokes. Go buy a red sports car. You'll be fine. No, there's some serious underlying things that are a problem. We worry about our relationships. Are we worried about whether or not we're disappointing the people? Are we living up to their expectations? And if we did conclude we're not, then that opens up the door to being, oh, we're irrelevant. All right, we've been rejected. These are all the things. Then there's other men that come along. You know, I'm dating, and then some other guy comes along, and is he taller than me? Is he better looking than me? Is he earning more money than me? Does he drive a better car than me? Oh man, we just have all this. So this is the list of things that we're worried about. But then let's throw in the one that is fun for guys. All right, let's just make it fun, and that is vulnerability. We are told that we are not to have or show emotions. And we are not to ask directions. We are not to make wrong choices. And this is where the women have a bit of an advantage over us, because they are allowed to and encouraged to talk to their friends about it. And there's in the stats that go on, the stats currently are that 2 out of 5 men will have some kind of anxiety disorder diagnosed throughout the course of their life. And it's 3 out of 5 women will be diagnosed with some kind of anxiety disorder. But the people that do the diagnosis are pretty darn sure that the men are underreported because they just won't ask for help. And so they're trying to deal with it themselves. Mm-hmm. So all of these things are things that guys have been told you're supposed to do, but then the kicker is you can't talk to anybody about it. You can't ask for help. So then all that does is just seal the lid on top of that kettle and guarantees that when the steam builds up, it's going to do some damage, either to the kettle or to the stuff that's all the way around the kettle.
Absolutely. And
so,
I mean, like for me, like I find it really, I remember once turning on the news and there was a story about kind of the differential access to, you know, like who was accessing mental health services. And it was like disproportionately women.
Yes.
And then the story was, for reasons which I I can't fathom the story was, so what are we to glean about the fact that women are suffering a lot more than men? And the story totally missed the point, which is that it's not that men are not suffering, it's that they're suffering in silence, which is
Yeah.
the 𝗘𝗺𝗃𝗵.
Yeah, but you know, interesting is we're suffering in silence. You're absolutely right, and that is the real story there. But that's exactly what we've been told to do. The strong silent type, right? You know, suffer in silence. That's a good one. And then God bless you, Brits. You know, keep the stiff upper lip and you know, just sort of muscle through it. We'll talk about twisted messages that we've all been given, and that's what it leads to. So that's why, you know, this, let's kind of redefine that. Let's be smarter than this. And that's why I love Masculinity 2.0. And we get the chance to make it over, because the beautiful thing about all of this is that in every single situation, it is one person making a choice each time. I am choosing to follow the stereotype instead of practicing self-care. I am choosing to give in to that pressure instead of saying, just a minute, this doesn't make sense to me, and this doesn't seem to be serving me in any kind of a way. And when we make a choice in one direction, that's proof that I can make a choice in the other direction if I want to. That's the beautiful thing about free will. I get to choose what I want to do. Now, you know, we'll have some guys say, well, I can't do that. You know, the social pressure is too great. And there's an exercise I learned. One of my teachers is a fellow named Jack Canfield. Perhaps you've run into he was a co-author of all those Chicken Soup for the Soul books. Perhaps you've encountered some of those ones. Anyway, there's this little exercise that we do. It's called can't or won't. And if people say, well, I can't, you know, overcome this social pressure. I can't ask for directions. I'll look weak. Well, no, you actually can. But when we go through it, what we discover is we start saying, I won't ask for help. No, I could ask for help, but I won't ask for help. I would rather wander around lost for an extra hour than ask somebody, than appear to be weak by asking somebody for help. Okay, well, that's fine. That's your choice. But if you say I can't, then you're powerless. But if you say I won't, then you own the choice. Now, go ahead. You know, don't ask for help. Don't seek out some assistance with your anxiety or your worry. But recognize that you are the one that made that choice, and then live with it. And don't complain about it. Don't blame somebody else for it, because you made the choice. And if you say, no, I won't ask for help, I would rather walk around and suffer this than ask for help. Okay, well, there might be a point where that doesn't feel so good anymore. And then you can start changing I won't to I could. I could ask for help if I wanted to, all right? Well, I might ask for help. Okay, good. Now, see, now you're making the choices again. I will ask for help. And now, again, you're owning the choice. And we all have that choice. And so when you say, I can't, recognize, change the word can't to I won't. Because now suddenly you own the power again. When we say we can't, we are a victim. And nobody is a victim, because we're making these choices all the time. Now, you know, you might say, well, there's some things that I simply can't do. There's these, you know, I can't run a marathon. No, right now you can't. But if you change that to I won't run a marathon, then you say, okay, fine, you don't want to. But could you? Well, yeah, I could if I wanted to, if I set my mind to it. And then, yeah, I might like to do that. I might like to, yeah, I could. Maybe I will. Then, yes, I will. Well, then what are the steps to doing that? And it's the same as I can't control my anger. I have a bad, I'm just one of those guys with a bad temper. I can't control my temper. And I lash out at my kids, or I kick the dog, or I lash out at my partner, my wife, or my girlfriend, or my significant other, my boyfriend. And as soon as we say, I can't, then we've given up control. But if you say, I won't control my anger, that's a different thing, isn't it? You're making the choice. And now, I'd rather not control my anger than learn how to deal with my emotions. That's what's happening here. I'm making the choice. It's easier for me, and I'd prefer to hurt the ones around me and hurt myself than learn how to deal with these things. But again, it's a choice. Now, that's your perfectly good choice, but then the ones around you, those ones close to you, still also get to choose whether they want to stay around you or not. And they get to leave. Yeah. But then, and we hear women, unfortunately, say, I can't leave him. Well, the same thing applies. I won't leave him. There are choices. I would rather stay in this bad relationship than go to the effort it would take to change it and the effort to take control of my life again. But always it's a choice. And as soon as you know you've got the choice, the power comes back to you. And then you can start making other decisions. It's wonderful. So liberating.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really love that philosophical approach, that slight tweak to just kind of see it as a facet of personal responsibility in terms of the choices that you're making. And the fact is, like when you were talking about kind of like asking for directions and things, like, if you pictured kind of like walking around for 5 hours rather than ask for directions, it sounds ridiculous, but we kind of do that in life on a macro scale.
Yeah.
We kind of walk around for 5 years wondering, like, and not asking for directions in life. But kind of that reaching out is just so important. And again, it kind of goes back to that lack of rationality and kind of, well, is this take on masculinity actually helping us? Like, is it actually facilitating a better life in 5 years for me and my family? And if the answer is no, then why not drop it?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And that realization, that aha moment, comes eventually for all of us. And if we resist it, and you and I have talked before, and I talked about how the universe kind of nudges you along the way, and kind of, you see little hints here and there, whether it's a feeling inside or whether it's, a book you read or something, and you think, yeah, I really should do that. And then you kind of forget about it. The universe has this wonderful way of nudging you. And if you ignore the nudges long enough, eventually it smacks you upside the head with a 2x4 and says, hey, this is important. You got to pay attention to it. And sometimes it's a heart attack, and sometimes it's a divorce, and sometimes it's, losing a job. For me, it was landing homeless. August of 2009, I've told you about this, suddenly I'm sleeping in my car. And of course, my first reaction is, whose fault is this? Who do I blame for this? And I'm looking around for somebody to blame, and there's nobody. And you reach the conclusion. And that's this aha moment where you suddenly say, oh, okay, well, I've been the one to direct this little play here that's landed me in this situation. And that's when you finally have the nerve to say, and the balls, excuse me, but we're talking about guys, to say, yes, my way is not working. I thought I was a smart guy. I thought I had it all figured out. And yet all these decisions that I've made have landed me here. And if I step back and rationally look at the evidence, and the results in a scientific kind of way, I have no choice but to conclude that my way has not worked. And I remember very clearly sitting in my car, and it was early one morning, and saying, and I said it out loud to anybody who would listen. There was nobody else around, just me, but I said it out loud and said, all right, my way is not working. I am wide open to hearing a better way. Somebody, please tell me a better way, because this isn't working. And how stupid to allow it to get to that point where I had, reached this state of having to live in my car. And what's really cool is that as soon as you open yourself and ask for help, it says all over the place. So, if you read the Bible, if you read anything, it says, ask and it shall be given. And it's so true, because that very day, it was funny because I was still working, I was still serving my clients, doing consulting. But because I'm homeless, I would drive to the public library every day because they had Wi-Fi and I could sit there and do this work. And I'm sitting there working away, and I had to go to the bathroom. So I get up, walk to the men's room in the library, and I'm walking through these shelves where all the stacks where the books are. And this book literally falls off the shelf, lands on the floor in front of me. And I'm a bit of a tidy geek, so I bend down to pick it up, and I look at the title, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. And I start flipping through the pages. And it was the first book that said, hey, here's how you do it instead. It was a self-help book, Dr. Wayne Dyer. And I thought, okay, this is getting a little spooky and a little woo-woo, but hey, I asked for help, and here it is. We have to open ourselves. We have to stop being so damn stubborn. Say, no, I've got it. I'm going to muscle my way through this. Well, all you do is get a bruise on your forehead when you keep banging your head against the wall. And so as guys, what we need to do is say, okay, I'm looking at the statistics. I'm looking at my life. I'm looking at my level of joy and my level of satisfaction, my level of contentment with this life that I'm leading. How's it working out for me? Is it everything that I wanted it to be? And if you say, well, no, it's not, then maybe, just maybe, instead of carrying on down that same road that we've been going on, maybe it's time to say, well, just a minute, maybe I took a wrong turn somewhere. Maybe, maybe I should stop and ask for directions and get a little assistance here. What could the harm be of asking for some help? Well, I'll look like a weakling. Well, you look like an asshole right now because your life is falling apart. And so at some point we start to say, okay, maybe it's worthwhile to choose instead of can't. Maybe I'm starting to say I won't and I could. All right, I will. Yeah, that's the kind of change we want to make.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like when people talk about kind of like an elephant in the room when it comes to like a thought or a problem or a kind of an unfortunate social dynamic. We kind of talk about the fact that if you just kind of ignore it, like, full well it'll just come back with a vengeance at some point.
Yeah.
The same is true, like if you've got some kind of thing inside you which is pushing you off equilibrium, like if it's manifested itself in a way that means that your attention has been drawn to it, it's probably sufficiently important to capture it before it kind of grows.
Pay attention now.
Yeah, but we kind of notice something that feels off, like it might be a feeling, or it might be a relationship, or it might be a dynamic, and we just kind of hope it'll go away. But I guess the rule is if it's there like a week later, then it's probably not. It's not nothing. Like it's
that's
something.
Right. Yeah. And what we like to do is the la 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 la. I don't want to hear this. And relationships are a great one where it shows up, and we get into relationships very often for the wrong reasons. And then it's been going on for a little while, and okay, this is not really working, but I'm going to ignore it, because the level of effort to do something about that, either address it within the relationship, or say, this has run its course, I got to leave. But we just ignore it and ignore it and ignore it. And then, but you're right, eventually the lessons that we need to learn keep circling back to us. And I've used the analogy before, when we were in school, and if you didn't learn, you can't do calculus until you've got your times tables. And so the teacher is going to say, no, keep working on the times tables, and you haven't got it right. Let's go back and try that again, because you can't move forward until you've got the first lessons first, and then you move on to the next ones. And life is exactly the same. And that's why these things keep circling around. We need to learn these lessons. We need to master these skills. Then we can move on to the better things. But until you do, those same mistakes keep coming around again and again and again, until you finally say, all right, that's it. I'm going to learn this thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing to say is we can definitely put to bed this idea that men don't suffer, like based on kind of everything that we've been discussing here and everything that you outlined. We can put to bed once and for all the idea that men don't have problems. And I mean, I'm kind of running this campaign at the moment around International Men's Day, which is next Thursday, the 19th November, and 90% of the stuff that you get mentioned about International Men's Day is positive, including from women. But then you'll get the odd comment still that somebody will kind of say, well, every day is International Men's Day, and men don't have problems. And it's like, well, I'm not sure that so many men are committing suicide for fun.
Right.
And so there's definitely something going on here, and there's definitely something that needs to change. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Back earlier this year, with all the problems that are going on in the U.S., and especially with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, I wrote a piece, a blog, and imagine your body. Every single one of us has 206 bones in our body. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, if you're black, if you're white, if you're tall, short, smart, dumb, whatever. You got 206 bones in your body. The biggest one is the femur. That's that upper leg bone that runs from your hip down to your knee. It is, and the average male is about 19 inches long, and it's capable of holding something like 3.5 times, supporting that, the weight of your body. The tiniest bone in your body is something called the snapes, and it's in your inner ear. There's tiny little bones there. It's about 5 millimeters long, and you could crush it with your pinky. And, all kinds of bones in between those things. Now, when all those bones are working great, everything's fine. But if one of those bones should break, all of a sudden, it's really important to pay attention to that bone. Right? Because it needs attention now, because it's broken and it's hurting, and the rest of your body isn't capable of carrying on. And the idea that the rest of the body would say, so that one bone in your arm is broken, so what? It doesn't bother the rest of us, and that you would ignore the fact that there's this serious problem. If you get an infection, if you get a cut, what happens? Your whole body, your immune system, your white blood cells all say, okay, quick, let's focus on that problem right there. And, that the whole Black Lives Matter, the whole men have got a problem here. Yeah, every day is, all lives matter. Of course they do, but these are the ones that are busted right now, and it's International Men's Day. Yeah, every day is Men's Day. Yeah, but there's this problem that needs to be dealt with, and it needs attention. And so, yeah, it makes sense to focus attention on what's busted right now and fix it. And then we can go on to some amazing things beyond that. But until it's fixed, we're stuck right where we are.
And the fact is that we're all so interconnected. I mean, obviously, even if there's that man over there that's suffering, that's nothing to do with you, it'll be somebody else's husband, somebody else's son, somebody else's granddad, or whoever. We're so interconnected that it doesn't make sense to kind of hive ourselves off based on our individual group identity and kind of go, well,
Yeah.
I'll concentrate solely on the sufferance within this small circle of influence, because there's no such thing. Like, if you only focus on female mental health, obviously they'll be dragged down by the fact that men in their life will be suffering. And if we only concentrate on men, then that's also going to drag down those men when they have a woman in their life that's suffering. So we've got to foster this kind of intersectionality, and that's the only way that we're going to solve this.
Absolutely. And you did that this morning with this woman that you met in the park. And, you know, can you imagine how ludicrous it would be if you encountered this person that was experiencing some problems, and you said, oh, sorry, it's not International Women's Day, I can't help you today. You know, you'll get your day later. Hold on, call me. You know, that's just ludicrous. But there is an International Women's Day, and there is Mental Health Day, and there is, and that's great, because it allows us to focus some attention and say, hey, just, you know, this is important stuff that we need to deal with. It doesn't mean that every day. I mean, gosh, now we're heading into the holiday season. Christmas is going to be coming up, and at Christmas time wouldn't it be great if we treated, you know, if every day was Christmas? Well, let's behave that way all year long, but we do, you know, single out one day to really think about that, and that's entirely appropriate that we should do that.
Absolutely. So as we kind of come to the end here, like, if there was a couple of particularly important things that you'd like the audience to take away in order to be able to rectify this, what do you think? What do you think they'll be?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is this idea of taking personal responsibility. Stuff happens to us all over the place. Every single day, stuff happens to us. And the easiest thing in the world is to look for external circumstances or external people to blame and say, oh, well, if the government would only behave this way, then my life would be better. If the economy would only behave this way, if my spouse, my partner, my boss, we're pointing fingers all over the place. And when we're pointing fingers, then we're powerless to do anything about it, because until the government, the weather, the boss, the economy, your spouse decides to change for your benefit, you're stuck. So the very first thing is to say, all right, these are the circumstances I find myself in. What am I going to now do? Because I'm the only one that can take responsibility. So that's the first thing I would say. And the second thing I would say is this idea of choice. We all have these choices, and we're making choices every single day. We're making choices about the mood we wake up for in the morning. And even if I wake up in a down mood or something, I can say, I don't enjoy being in this down mood. I am going to consciously bring other thoughts into my head. I'm going to read an uplifting book. I'm going to it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I feel like crap, but you know what? I'm going to watch an old funny cartoon. I'm going to take 15 minutes and watch a funny cartoon just to cheer myself up. We have that choice. And we have the ability to choose our thoughts. We have the ability to choose our emotions. We have the ability to direct our lives. I didn't know that for so many years, and that's why I want to help people understand that. You have the choice, and anxiety is not a fact of life that you're stuck with. It's something that you can change. It's been a choice that we've all been making for so long that it's become a habit, and therefore, like any habit, it just feels like I don't have a choice, but you do. That's the biggest thing that I'd like to say, and then where you go from there, well, hey, we can say, I'd like to make a different choice. Great, let me help you make a different choice. But until you realize that you have the ability to make that choice, then you're stuck. And you're not stuck. You can just change it right away if you want.
Well, I think that's the perfect note on which to finish. Positive note of personal responsibility and choices, and the fact that the process of change is there
Yeah.
for us to be able to begin. And I think
If
that's
you don't like it, you can change it.
absolutely. Yeah, perfect note on which to finish, I think, David. And obviously, well, I really enjoyed the conversation, that's for sure. I mean,
I did too, Matthew. I love talking about it. You can see I kind of get excited about it. But the transition that I've gone through in my life, the comparison of my life today and my life 15 years ago, 20 years ago, is night and day. I'm a completely different person, and it's just so much better. And I just want to share that with everybody. It just feels so damn good. I can't. My kettle has gotten the opposite thing. Instead of anxiety built up, I've got joy built up that just won't stay inside. And I want to. It's going to explode. Oh no, we're going to have joy splattered all over the kitchen.
I love that. It's always such a pleasure to be able to chat.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to share, Matthew. I really appreciate that.
Of course, absolute pleasure. Right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, we'll have David on again. Pleasure, David. Thanks a lot.
Okay.